It was the dawn of the third age of podcasting, 30 years after the series had launched.
The Babylon podcast was a dream given form. Its goal, to discuss the place where humans and aliens could work out their differences peacefully.
It's a port of call, home away from home for established fans, newbies, Jon, Blaine, and guests.
Humans and aliens wrapped in 2,500,000 tons of spinning metal, all alone in the night.
It could be a dangerous place.
Wait, what?
But it's our last, best hope for peace.
This is the story of the last of the Babylon stations.
The year is 2024.
The name of the podcast is
Babylon 5, 30 years later.
Hello and welcome back to Babylon 5, 30 years later, the podcast that is taking you through every episode of Babylon 5, the classic science fiction drama from the 90s, 30 years after it was released. My scratchy, craggly voice belongs to John Wilson, that's me, and I have never seen Babylon 5 before. Well, that's not entirely true. I've seen every episode up to and including this one, but that is all the Babylon 5 I have seen before. Everything after this is a complete mystery to me. What even is a Shadows in the first place? I don't know. But with me on this journey, with his deadly electronic right hand, like a Lex Luthor, Michael Jackson, Luke Skywalker combination, is Blaine Dowler. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Oh, you know, talking is optional. But other than that, I'm doing great.
Okay. Yeah. So, spider in the web.
We are here to talk about a spider in the web, yes. This is the 6th episode of the 2nd season of Babylon 5. And it was released on December 7th, 1994, which is why you're receiving this episode on December 7th, 2024. And side note on our coverage and scope and such things, because I am such a completist, I have bribed Blaine into agreeing to cover all of the tie-in media for Babylon 5. And right around this time is when the comic series started coming out. The first issue of the comic series came out yesterday, 30 years ago. So we will be covering that. We're going to cover it in chunks. So expect an episode covering the first 4 issues of the comic several weeks, a couple of months down the road.
Yeah, so that was kind of an arbitrary decision to chop it after number 4 because we haven't read it yet. We'll check where the story arcs are, and we might, because there's 11 issues, we might do the first 3 or the first 5 and adjust.
Yeah, the collections do 4, 8, and 11. But we'll see if that feels right when we're covering it. But yeah, a spider in the web, and not the Peter Parker kind.
No. James Shigeta just doesn't have any luck with his business deals, does he?
No, he doesn't. But this is one of our few episodes that's not written by J. Michael Straczynski. This is written by Lawrence Titilio and directed by Kevin Kremen. And I was trying to think if we'd seen Kevin Kremen yet on this show, and I think this is his first directing credit.
Yeah, this is his first credit as director. He has been production manager since Midnight on the Firing Line. So he was production manager through the entirety of the regular season 1 and will serve that role for a lot of season 2. It's off and on. So he was not production manager on this one, for example, nor on episode 5, probably because of the lead time required to direct. He was not production manager on episode 3 either. But yes, as far as director credits are concerned, this is his first of 5 episodes that he will be directing for the series across seasons 2 and 3.
And he directed a few episodes of Murder, She Wrote, and some other random things. An episode of Shades of L.A., a TV movie called Siringo, an episode of a TV series called Hollywood Detective. And that's it before this. Most of his work in the industry is production work, not directing work.
Yeah, and in case anyone's interested, the 4 episodes of Murder, She Wrote he directed were all done before JMS was hired to work on that show.
Okay.
So there's seasons 3, 6, and 7, and JMS worked on it for 8 and 9. And we usually just talk about what they did before they got here, but since there's only 2 directing credits after, he did 1 episode of Providence and 2 episodes of Rizzolian Isles.
So not a whole lot going on there. And I mean, his directing on this was fine. I wouldn't say there was anything stand out about it, but I don't think there's anything lacking about it either. It was just, it was an episode. I don't tend to notice directing unless one of those things is like, wow, that scene didn't work at all. or something really stand out and amazing in how things were portrayed on screen.
Yeah, they also say that TV is a writer's medium, so there's not as much flexibility in direction, partly because of budgets and partly because of schedules as well. One other credit that I think we would be remiss if we did not mention for sci-fi fans, he was also the second unit director on Star Trek The Motion Picture. So the second unit directors, for those who aren't already aware, sometimes you'll have things like establishing shots or, just minor scenes that don't have your regular cast. Those are often directed by a second unit. So if you don't have your core players anywhere in the scene, or if it's just a short shot of a hillside or something, the second unit tends to go get those shots.
Right.
While the first unit, or the main unit, is the one working with your regular cast.
Effects and stunt work are often done by a second unit because your first unit is doing principal photography, and you can go and pick up all the special stuff on another time. So yeah, he was Star Trek The Motion Picture. Very important there. All right, so let's see. We've got title, air date, writer, director. So let's get into the story of this episode. There's pretty much only an A-plot in this story. A friend of Talia Winters comes to the station. He is named Taro Isogi, and he's at the station to help negotiate with Martian independence movement. There's been a lot of hostility between Earth and Mars. There's even terrorist stuff. There's a free Mars movement, and he has arrived to help, negotiate and try to build a plan for the future. Is he with or is he negotiating with Future Corp?
Yeah, I believe he was with.
He's representing Future Corp. Right. And the Martian representative is Amanda Carter, played by Adrienne Barbeau. She's there to represent Martian interests. And although, like I said, Mars tends to have a bit of a violent reputation in their defense of their rights, she is, an even-handed person and ready to come to the table and get things done. During the course of events, Talia and Taro are walking down the hall, and random guy comes up to them and grabs Taro by the shoulder neck joint, and with a huge electrical shock kills him, saying "Free Mars" as he does so. Talia, being a telepath, is able to get a bit of a quick scan of him, but it's all jumbled. It doesn't make any sense. All she really gets out of that first contact is that he wasn't really thinking "Free Mars." He was saying it, but it wasn't a conscious thought in his brain. So there's a scene on the side between Captain Sheridan and Senator Elise Voudreau, who's played by Jessica Walter, just voicing the concerns about Future Corp and about the whole Free Mars thing. And Captain Sheridan's like, well, there's only so much I can do. I am not on Mars. I am not on Earth. I am manning a station, housing the negotiations. That's about all I can be in charge of. So she's just like, you know what, whatever, just keep an eye. And if you notice anything untoward, let me know. So he's like, okay, whatever. Once Taro is dead, of course, Talia is upset. And we saw in the first season some interactions between her and Michael Garibaldi, where Garibaldi was trying to hit on her, because she's blonde and attractive and a telepath and whatever. And he does come and talk to her during this time of grief. And at first she thinks it's just more of the same. But no, he is being sincere. He is trying to comfort her as a friend, and he's not trying to do anything, unwelcome or untoward. So they do spend some quality time together, where she's able to just, voice her grief. He talks about losing his dad. She talks about growing up in the Psi Corps and interacting with a mentor that she had there named Abby. Just a sweet scene. The man who killed Taro, he is, we find out later, named Abel Horn. He's in communication with this, electronic voice or source or other end of a communication through the computers called Control. And he sends them his video recording of the assassination of Taro Isogi, and they see through his eyes that Talia Winters was a witness. So now he needs to go kill her. he's not too keen on this. You can see that he's subconsciously reticent to do so. We also find out through Garibaldi's and Ivanova's research that Amanda Carter is not just a representative of Mars. She once was a leader in the terrorist-free Mars movement, a fact that she has kept hidden because she did not want that to jeopardize her, legitimate political efforts on Mars's behalf. What else? So Abel does eventually come after Talia. He goes and talks to Amanda Carter at one point and falls asleep in her room. She calls Talia to sort of, reach out and try to make things all work out. He wakes up and attacks Amanda, and I'm trying to remember how the resolution all works out with the confrontation between her and Talia. I'm blanking on it.
Yeah, there wasn't a confrontation between her and Talia at that point because Abel Horn was feigning sleep. He'd asked her to get Talia there to help him and claimed he was not the killer. And as soon as the call was made and Talia comes in, he subdues her. So that when Talia gets there, Amanda Carter is unconscious and there's only Abel Horn awake. And the security detail were waiting outside. So that one, Sheridan had heard rumors of the project and figured out how to detect it and detected it in Amanda's quarters. So he sends in the security team. And then, so Abel Horn grabs Talia and says...
That's right. He has her as a hostage. And eventually they're able to take him down with gunfire.
Yeah.
And at one point along the way, early in the story that I forgot to mention, before everything started going underway with Abel Horn, is we saw a mysterious person underground in the San Diego wastelands on Earth send a communication that things should begin. And through the course of the episode, we see that Abel Horn was supposed to be dead. He was killed in an attack in space. And we see flashes through his eyes that he was, they rebuilt me. They put me back together stronger, faster, with an electronic hand, that sort of thing. And he's basically been conscripted and seemingly at least partially brainwashed into working for this mysterious organization. There is a woman in the scene who I think the story tells us is a Psi Corps person. I seem to suspect that she was. I can't remember now if my suspicions were actually spelled out in the episode or not. We can talk more about that later.
Yeah, she was. When Talia helps Abel by digging into his memories, she gets a clear vision of the surgery they performed on him. And yes, that controller was a Psy-Cop.
So she sees her, and I just watched this. Why am I blanking out on the end? Do they kill Abel?
Actually, when they just disable him and they were going to help him and expose the conspiracy that turned him into what he was. But then security officer Zach Allen, who's introduced in this episode, detected an energy surge. So they all leave, and it was basically a self-destruct built in.
Right. So then there's a conversation at the end between Sheridan and Garibaldi, and Garibaldi's like, I know you don't trust me, but if there's something going on with the station you seem to know about, because, like you said, Sheridan had some intuitions over the course of the episode on how things were going down. So turns out that Sheridan is a bit of a conspiracy theorist. He likes to dive into deep, dark secrets and mysteries, but evidently only legitimate ones. I don't know how conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, he doesn't say he's a conspiracy nut. He says he collects secrets.
He collects secrets, which, not entirely sure what the difference is, except that, like I said, Sheridan's all seem to be legitimate. But he, after 3 years of searching, was able to find the name of this organization called Bureau 13. And he thinks that they are responsible for Horn being there. And they were going to infiltrate Free Mars. And we go back to the mysterious Psy-Cop, who is the same person that launched the program at the very beginning underneath the San Diego wastelands. And she is talking to the same control people that Horn was talking to, and reports that things were partially successful. Horn was destroyed, but Bureau 13 is not in jeopardy. But yeah, so other than the stuff that I forgot and you helped fill in, are there any other important points that I missed in the episode?
I think just the final conversation is when Amanda Carter thinks her career is over. But Sharon and Garibaldi say, yeah, we don't have to tell anyone that used to be part of Free Mars and you have this, because Taro Asogi's goal for a bloodless end to the conflict on Mars is a good one. So we'll keep our mouths shut if you keep working to make that happen.
Yes, everything is done very sympathetically at the end there. No one is demonized, because it's really easy to, paint a wide black brush against people who are associated with things that, are less than agreeable in their past. But it's very obvious that Carter has moved on with her life and is trying a better way to achieve similar goals.
Yeah, and if she is being honest, when she joined the Free Mars movement, it was not the terrorist organization it has become. She says they were much less radical. And she left.
Right. It's like whenever Cobra was still just multi-level marketing before they actually got into.
Yeah. Yeah. So she left because of what they were becoming.
So looking at our guest cast for the episode, our first player is Michael Beck, who played Abel Horn. And his Internet Movie Database photo looks so different than he looks in the episode. For one, he's got a big old grin, and he never smiles once in this episode. So it's one of those faces that gets completely transformed by a grin. But he was in Xanadu. He was in The Warriors. His credits for acting seem to be from 15 years before this. Megaforce, Alcatraz, The Whole Shocking Story. And he's only in the one episode of Babylon 5. He was in 3 episodes of Murder, She Wrote, and would later be in a couple of episodes of Walker, Texas Ranger. Oh, and he comes back in Crusade as somebody completely different.
Yeah. And for those 3 episodes, they're in seasons 5, 7, and 9 of Murder, She Wrote. The season 9 episode was not written by JMS.
Okay, but the other 2 were?
But he was. No, because JMS only worked on it for 8 and 9.
Okay.
So it was the only one I needed to check. So yeah, none of them were JMS episodes.
All right. So he's not really somebody that I recognized from anywhere. But of course, Adrienne Barbeau as Amanda Carter has a rather lengthy credit list. I think I most recently saw her, not recently as in production, but recently as in I watched. I saw the original Cannonball Run, and she's in that. She's also known for Back to School, Escape from New York, Creepshow, The Fog. She voiced Catwoman on the Batman animated series, or at least for a lot of the episodes that she was in. I don't know if it's all of them. She's done a lot over the years.
Oh, yeah. She was in, about 4 years after this, she will be in an episode of Deep Space Nine.
Mm-hmm. She was in Weird Science, the TV series, not the movie.
Yeah, she was did an episode of The Real Ghostbusters for another JMS crossover. 2 episodes of Murder, She Wrote, again, seasons 2 and 3. An episode of The Twilight Zone from the 1980s. And it was season 1, so again, before JMS became involved. He was on there for seasons 2 and 3.
She was Abby Arcane, or Abby Cable, in the old Swamp Thing movie. And then she came back for a 1-episode spot on the Swamp Thing TV show, the new one, not the 80s one. So I think it's probably intentional casting to put her on the Swamp Thing TV show as a nod to her role in the film.
Yep, she was the female lead in the Swamp Thing.
So Adrienne Barbeau, this is her 1 episode of Babylon 5, but she is here. James Shigeta plays Taro Isogi. Another face I didn't really recognize. He's known for Die Hard, The Crimson Kimono. He voiced General Lee in Mulan. All you Mulan fans out there, he voiced General Lee. And he was in Midway. Looking through his credits, they're really sparse. Like, he has roles as recently as 2022, but then 2012 before that, 2005 before that. So his credits are sparse, but he has been in a couple episodes of Sequest, a couple episodes of Murder, She Wrote. I guess his acting credits get more dense as you go back into the 1980s. Oh, he's in Airwolf.
Yes. Yep. One that is better known for a theme song, especially to listeners of the Fantastic Cast.
Right.
But yeah, I think he's certainly best known as Takagi from Die Hard. So he was Holly's boss in that.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the one running Nakatomi Corporation in America.
He's been in TV and films going all the way back to 1959. So although his acting is very sparse in the last few decades, he's been doing stuff throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and just, not as much in later life. So that's definitely understandable for a regular actor.
Yeah. And I suspect a lot of the gaps are just because there's only so many roles that they were giving Asian descended actors in Hollywood at the time. Because when you look at the roles he does have, there's, Yorktown, A Time to Heal, like I said, General Lee. So there seem to be a lot of things where, yes, we're going to have a character from Southeast Asia, and that's the only opportunities he's had.
So then we have a new recurring face on the station. Jeff Conaway is introduced here as Zach Allen. He's on the security forces, and he is best known probably as Kaniki on Grease, which would then lead him to a very similar role as Bobby Wheeler on Taxi for 4 seasons of that show.
Yes, and limited contact in season 4. He was only in 3 of those episodes, and he was not in the 5th and final season at all.
Okay. But he is in a lot of Babylon 5 as security person Zach Allen. I'm not sure how much, development he'll get as a person, but he is a named background face. I imagine he's going to be a lot like Josh Cox is. He's just the face that we see on a regular basis.
He will start to prominence. There's actually a bit of a story behind his casting. His departure from Taxi was because he was dealing with addiction issues.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd essentially been blacklisted and found it incredibly difficult to get work after that. And when they were casting, at that time, the script called for security guard number 2. He didn't have a name yet. And, JMS was there for the casting, and Kaniki walks in, reading and auditioning for an unnamed role. So JMS essentially took him aside and said, what are you doing? Why are you coming for this? And he was just desperate to get any regular show and prove that, yes, he did have his life cleaned up and he would be able to get this done. And he had been sober for a while. And JMS figured, well, everyone's entitled to one really big screw up in their lives, so he gave him a shot. And he says it turned out to be one of the best decisions he ever made. They knew that a storyline was going to come up where Garibaldi would have a new second in command.
Okay.
Because obviously his previous one was gone. So they decided, okay, security guard number 2 is now Zach Allen. You are the new second in command. And they ran with it. So
that's pretty great.
Yeah, so this was kind of a redemption for the actor as well as the part. So yes, he, as far as we know, he stayed clean and sober for the duration of Babylon 5 and at least 10 years beyond, but not indefinitely. So that his addiction problems were fed directly into his passing at age 60 in 2011.
He also has 79 episodes of The Bold and the Beautiful a few years before this, and he was on an episode of Freddy's Nightmares, a show that I watched as a kid, and I don't ever hear even acknowledge its existence. That is the TV spinoff of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, which probably didn't need to exist, but 10-year-old me thought it was the bee's knees. And Jessica Walter as Senator Elise Voudreau. Now, her face I saw, and I was like, oh, I know her. She was the mom on Arrested Development. She's Lucille Bluth. And I thought that was pretty great. I'm not sure what else I have seen her in besides Arrested Development, but she is in that. She does voice Mallory Archer on the animated show Archer. She was in Play Misty for Me in 1971 and Grand Prix in 1966. I think Archer is her only current role because, well, it says through 2021. So maybe she's not actually on that anymore. Maybe the show ended. I don't know about Archer. She voiced Granny Goodness on the Harley Quinn TV show and a random person named Wendy. I don't know who Wendy is. But she voiced Granny Goodness. That makes me smile.
Yeah, she also voiced Fran Sinclair on Dinosaurs.
Oh, fantastic. I love Fran. I love Dinosaurs. That's a good show. I watched that entire show with my daughter. That was a good show.
With quite the ending.
Yes. Yes, a definite Dinosaurs ending. She was on 90210 for 13 episodes. Lots of stuff just over the years, everywhere. She'll get recurring roles on TV shows and do those for a while, then move on to something else. Several episodes of One Life to Live, a show called Oh Baby, 5 episodes of Coach as a character named Susan Miller, 4 episodes of Murder, She Wrote.
Yep, and an episode of Columbo.
Columbo.
Yes, a season 3 episode, Mind Over Mayhem.
And whenever Trapper John gets his TV spinoff after MASH, she's in 10 episodes of that. And 8 episodes of The Love Boat. It's lots and lots and lots of roles.
So, and again, her Murder, She Wrote episodes, she was in 4 of them, but none of them were JMS episodes. Only one was in one of his seasons.
Okay. So those are all of the guest stars. Annie Grindley is listed as co-starring. She's only in a couple of scenes, though, because she is the Psi Corps Mysterious 13 person. And she doesn't even have an Internet Movie Database photo. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, she's got 18 acting credits total. Most recently, a short film as an unnamed junkie in Pin Feathers. Her other roles are like Ben's wife or no name at all.
Single episodes here and there of things, including one episode of course, Babylon 5.
Yeah, and I think from here, her one episode of Murphy Brown and one episode of Boston Public, one episode of ER, those are probably the next most prominent roles that she would have had.
The way that her role is played here, I would have expected it to be a role that showed up again. But for whatever reason, story or character or actor, she did not.
A big part of that is because after this aired, they were the production was contacted by a company that makes role-playing games, the tabletop role-playing games, and one of them is titled Bureau 13.
Oh.
So they had to scuttle at least the name. So, but JMS figures, well, this is the kind of organization that's going to change its name once it leaks out and rotate through various names. So, yeah, we don't have a lot more contact that we know for sure is this organization, but we will certainly see things happening that they could easily have been behind. We just don't necessarily know who that is or what's going on.
So that covers our key characters and guest cast for the episode. Let's move into our League in Session, A Spider in the Web. What are your thoughts on this one, Blaine?
Yeah, this one, it was interesting going through. You mentioned that there is that one scene where Garibaldi and Talia are, getting to know each other, and that really stood out to me because it's like the caliber of Andrea Thompson's acting steps up, and she actually seems natural and relaxed for the first time. I think part of that is because Talia herself is stiff and guarded as a telepath. Mm-hmm. Right? She's constantly having to work to keep people out of her head, so she doesn't accidentally scan or anything. So, and frankly, because of the bond, I suspect we are seeing more of what they were like off camera because they were married at this point in time.
Oh, the actors for Garibaldi and Talia?
Yep.
Okay. I liked that in that scene that we had the callback to, was it the very first episode of the proper season when he tells Talia about his first and second most favorite things in the universe, and one of them turns out to be cartoons. And then she offers him a cup of hot tea, and he's like, as it turns out, tea is my third favoriteest thing in the universe. And she just like smiles because it's an old joke. That was fun.
Yeah, they had a lot of good moments, and this is positioning pieces. It's an interesting story that had potential to go somewhere. So we'll see exactly where it does go over the next 5 seasons. But
it seemed like we were being a puzzle piece onto or a game piece onto the board that wasn't really related to anything else, except that, we have talked about Earth-Mars relations. We have talked about how some of that is tense. It's just we've always talked about it in other contexts. And so having this come up here with like a whole lot of elements that we've never seen before related to that, it's almost like, oh, this could be a start of a brand new subplot, but it actually is continuing other subplots just in ways that aren't connected to things we talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
We do get a brief glimpse of the new president on TV early on, and he's continuing to tout that line of, we want to do what the previous president would have wanted us to do. Like that's his justification for all of his political strategies and movement, is fulfilling the unspoken dreams of the previous president, who obviously is dead now and can't say, no, that's not at all what I would want to be happening.
Yes. Yeah, this is President Clark is Is forwarding agendas that may or may not have actually been those of President Santiago.
Right. And we were talking about Talia. I feel like she did step up a lot in this episode. I really appreciated the scene that she had with Sheridan, where she is obviously very uncomfortable, very emotionally unsettled, and yet keeping herself together for the purpose of doing her job and being professional in front of her commanding officer. But she does not want to be there, and she basically forcefully says at the end, if you're done talking, I really don't want to be talking and I want to go now, can I? I forget exactly how she phrased it, but I thought it was a really good moment for her as a character, and I thought the actress did well with it. Because like you said, her acting has not always been the most relaxed and believable, but I thought she stepped up in this one.
Yeah. Yeah, she did in a few ways. And like I said, I think a lot of that is because her character is constantly guarded. I'm trying to find the quote, but for some reason the quotes that people have shared on the IMDb do not include a single line from Talia Winters.
This is her episode.
Uh-huh.
We haven't had very many Talia episodes. This is a Talia episode.
Yeah, we've got a conversation between Amanda and Taro, a one-off with Michael Garibaldi, where he says his papa always said that laughter was better than pills for what ails you. So it's a line he says to Talia. Sheridan says telepaths are gifted and cursed in ways I can never hope to understand. I think that was a conversation with Ivanova.
Oh, speaking of Sheridan and Ivanova, they had a very delightful scene in the cold open where various things are coming up on the station, and Sheridan is able to either actively delegate or Ivanova volunteers and picks up. So, like, she walks away to go take care of something. He's just, like, standing there. All the jobs are covered. He can just go about his business. Like, it's good to be the captain.
Yeah, that was a nice moment. So
the whole Bureau 13 thing here, like you said, you're not sure exactly where this is going to go. I don't know where I want it to go. Like you said, it feels unconnected from what we've had so far before. But I mean, if they tell a story, of course, I'll be there for it. But right now, I don't feel invested in it as a concept.
Yeah, I think the main thing that, well, I was going to bring this up in giving form to the dream, but I think the main thing we need to take away from this is that Psi Corps is actively involved in projects that are not necessarily within their mandate.
Mm-hmm. Doing things they shouldn't be doing. Okay. There's got to be more to this episode. I feel like we've hardly talked about any of the episode itself.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I remember that we really want to bring up is when Sheridan found out it was Abel Horn. He made a point of saying, no, I want this guy because he took credit for a terrorist attack on Mars that killed friends of Jon and his wife, Anna.
That's right.
So there was a personal stake in that. Yeah, I don't know. I think we're selling it short with this, but it's because there's not a lot of B or C plot. There really is just that one plot to go through that is fairly easy to summarize.
Yeah, and although it's, drawn out and given a couple of twists and turns to fill out 45 minutes, it's a relatively simple plot. I thought Amanda Carter was a solid character. That Adrienne Barbeau, of course, portrayed her well. I don't know that she's of much consequence. And maybe that's what I'm not feeling in this episode, that I'm not feeling the consequence that I've gotten used to feeling with episodes of Babylon 5 in the second season and in the latter part of the first season. I'm used to feeling like, okay, this episode is going to mean things for the future. And since the Bureau 13 stuff is all new, I don't have anything to link it to. I'm just having a hard time feeling that weight.
Yeah. Also, keep in mind that at this point, we're in episode 6. This is the third episode in a row not written by JMS. Mm-hmm. There are only 4 more of those coming this season. So next week's episode 7, and then down the road, episodes 10, 14, and 17, where 17 will actually turn out to be Larry DiTilio's last episode. So he's got 2 more coming. And after that, for the entire run of this series, there's only one other episode not written by JMS, and it comes up in season 5.
Wow. Okay. So one more episode in a row here that is not JMS. That's Soulmates next week. And then 3 more scattered episodes throughout this season. And then everything after that is written by JMS except for one episode in season 5. Okay.
Yeah, we've got 2 by Peter David coming, 2 by Larry DiTilio coming, and the season 5 is by someone who only wrote that one episode for the entire run of the series.
Okay, well, I guess if that is everything we have to say about the episode itself, we do like to call out a last best hope, which is a standout character or character moment from the show. And Blaine, what's standing out to you in this one?
For me, it's the scene I already mentioned with Garibaldi and Talia actually bonding and Garibaldi getting through to her and helping her relax and laugh. So it was the most natural acting from the two of them, probably because of their off-screen relationship. Mm-hmm. But it was an entertaining scene. She basically said, that's one of the quotes I'm surprised wasn't there, is she basically tells him, no, I'm not here for your, basically saying, I'm not here to be hit on as usual, except he uses a fancier word, and he says, okay, can you tell me what that word means?
Yeah, I liked that scene a lot. She tells the story of Abby, and it's funny because she's just telling what is to her a normal story about her life, but outside of the context of her having lived it as a normal experience, it just continues to paint the Psi Corps in this really weird, sketchy light, because she's taken from her parents at a very, very, very young age. And they do this, and so they have a systematic process of acclimating their young recruits into the Psi Corps life by pairing them up with an older initiate. And so she had the Abby person with her, and she has nice emotional bond memories of this Abby person. But I'm listening to the story and I'm going, wow, it's kind of a messed up way to grow. But I did really like that overall scene between her and Garibaldi. And that was the one thing that stood out to me as like a real character, heart driven part of the episode. There weren't a whole lot of those this week, but that was mine as well. So that brings us to one of my favorite parts of this podcast, which is where we give form to the dream. Any tidbits from this episode that we want to stick a pin in. This is not spoiler territory. This is a make sure you remember or make sure you noticed this in the current episode, because you might not want to forget it for later. So everything in this is new. And you already mentioned that Bureau 13 might be changing its name. So what do we got going on here?
Yeah, so we will again see Psi Corps involving themselves in things outside their mandate. So we're just establishing that that's a thing they do here. It's also worth noting that this technology involves basically suppressing the natural personality of a person and laying another on top. That's kind of how he was being controlled. He's being trapped in that moment of death. We also have, when Sheridan asked Ivanova, to tell him about Talia Winters, you start off by saying, she's an interesting person, and Sheridan says, you never describe anyone that way.
Because she doesn't like Talia. I mean, she and Talia have gotten past a lot of their, most blatant tension, but she's still not fond of her.
Yeah, and then one last note. In that teaser that you mentioned, when Ivanova and Sheridan are walking, towards the end of the conversation, when they stop and talk about the arrangements, when Ivanova sort of twists and turns to the side, there is a character sitting behind them that's out of focus, drinking what appears to be a glass of red wine, or, a dark liquid in a similar glass, who's got sort of two-tone robes with padded shoulders, and there's seems to be a silvery badge on the right lapel.
The mysterious badge people. I have not gone back and found any of these people. I debated whether or not I should, but I have not gone back and looked at any of these people. I probably should just listen back to all our episodes and go find them.
Yeah, these are people that were, like I said, they were intended to be there for when they're introduced, because there is a line that says we've been on the station for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I said that the beverage looks like red wine because JMS liked to keep his secrets because he didn't want things spoiled, and I think maybe that was a detriment in this one, because I don't see one of these people just casually drinking wine while wearing the uniform.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get to that when we find out more about who and what they are. I think it might have been more of a mandate. Make sure those people are seen, and then that was a little too much leeway because they weren't told what kind of people these were.
All right. Okay, anything else from the teases for the future?
Yeah, I can't think of anything else that's jumping out at me right now.
So looks like a spider in the web is a little bit of a light episode for us. Not a whole lot to really dive into on that, but that's okay. Next week, we will be back with Soulmates, episode 7. And then after that, we're going to have a bit of a break because there's, of course, a broadcast break after episode 7. So be here for December 14th, and then that'll be our last episode of the year.
Yeah, and we'll have something for you guys to listen to, ideally a feedback episode between December 14th and when the show returned on January 25th of the following year. So, yeah, please send in your feedback so that we have something to give you in that break. One way to send that feedback is by email, Babylon5 30 years later at gmail.com.
Another way to send your feedback is by commenting on the website. Look at the website johnreadscomics.com and leave a comment on the episode that you want to respond to, or read that on the air.
All right, you can also leave comments at bureau42.com. There is no H in Bureau. This is where all of my podcasts live.
You can also leave reviews on your podcatcher of choice. We do check Apple Podcasts as a matter of course, so if you leave a review somewhere else, just let us know, and we'll be happy to read and thank you for your review on the air.
And finally, if you're following us on YouTube, you can also leave comments on those posts. And please keep in mind, it's John's first time through the series. We are recording with quite a bit of lead time, but please try to avoid spoilers on johnreadscomics.com. That'll be the one that John checks. So, the others I can curate, because, let's leave things unspoiled for everyone, if we possibly can.
Hopefully there are other first-time viewers going through the show with us. And that's always a nice thing to have when you're doing a show like this, is to have the other people along for the ride for the first time. Thank you all very much for listening.
And good eating to you.